What's up, guys? Raw Healing Food, and today I wanted to say a word about clean meats. I know there's a lot of vegetarians out there, people who are raw and yet still eat meat. They kind of eat like sushi, or like they eat their meat blue, just like searing the outside, inside's still bloody. And it seems that vegetarianism is the best if you can do it right, and really keep it clean, and get enough fats and stuff, and enough calcium. Really heavy emphasis on greens in your vegetarian diet, but there's also been a successful people who eat clean meats, and I'm talking about like people who are really healthy. Maybe they don't even have gray hair and they're over the age of like 105, 110. And what they do besides like exercise, be loving and spiritual, and exercise, eat greens, they adhere to this principle of clean meats. They rarely eat meat, but when they do, it's kind of like a smaller animal, I guess. And I'm talking like less than once a week. Like very, very rarely do they eat meat. They know they can live without meat. But some of these clean meats would be like, let's just go through the categories. Fish. Fish have to have scales and fins, and that means you don't want to be eating like lobster and shellfish, and like whales. Swordfish even fall into this unclean category. But, you know, your typical fish that you're gonna get is probably like trout or some kind of river fish. As long as those are from a clean source and you know that they are a healthy animal from a healthy environment and not being fed the wrong thing. Scales and fins, that's a good meat. And I would say that if you're gonna go for meat at all, or even dairy, like, don't choose the other ones if you can. Just try to stick with fish, or like birds. But another thing about fish is that a lot of times when it's from the ocean, or really anywhere, it can be a very polluted source. And the ocean is very irradiated in spots, and there's been nuclear bombs just being tested out in various places for generations now, and that radioactivity doesn't go away. It just goes into the animals and plants and gets dispersed across the planet. So know where your fish comes from if you're not going to grow it yourself. And avoid GMO. You can't be just tampering with that genetic DNA information and expect to still have a clean fish necessarily. There can be some really bad GMO animals that are starting to arrive on the scene now, especially with Monsanto. They have said that they came out with a GMO fish. That's just a terrible idea to eat that. And also, a lot of times these places feed the fish like corn and stuff. Guess what? Fish don't flop out of the water and start eating all the land plants. That's not a natural fish. And they also sometimes get fed their own kind. And if you have a fish being fed like cannibalistically, just like cows, it's no good. So watch what they eat. Watch where they're from, and consider doing it yourself if you're going to eat fish, because they can really help your garden out and your water areas and just kind of keep them balanced. You can even swim with the fish on your property, and yeah, these are the friendly fish. They don't have claws or anything, just fins and scales. So the next category would be birds. They have to have crops and gizzards, and like an extra long middle toe and hind heel, and not be a bird of prey. The raptors and owls and stuff, that's an unclean animal, but The list of good ones would be like doves and ducks, geese, turkeys, quails, and quail eggs I've heard are good, duck eggs, like pheasants and grouses. These are crop and gizzard clean birds, and they're not murderous birds. They're very friendly, and they can also help your compost. You can fence your chickens in with your compost, and let them turn part of their cage over and pick through it, and it'll make the compost get richer quicker. The oxygen from them plucking at it and everything really speeds up the process. And birds also get rid of your bad insects. They will just pick up, any critters around. There are good insects as well, like ladybugs, but there's also pests to your garden, so birds are a great way to keep that down. And also, these can be GMO treated very badly. Even if they say they're cage free, they might be in very poor environments still. They might be deformed, and deformed animals are unclean, and you can look up pictures online, but like some of these things are missing feathers. They've been GMO bred to just be fat, and their legs break, and it's awful. But we can really work on having good sources of birds if that's a meat that you like to eat. Let's see. And insects themselves, a lot of them are unclean, and a lot of things that crawl on the ground, if it crawls on the ground, it's supposed to be unclean, like a mouse or lizard, ferrets, hares, bunny rabbits. They're not clean animal. Rabbits chew their cud, but they don't have cloven hooves. So yeah, these things that crawl on the ground are unclean, but some insects are good, and it's hard to know which ones, and that's kind of partially because of language differences, and there's different insects in different areas of the world, so apparently it's sort of hard to get a good real list of these things. But grasshoppers and locusts are generally considered safe, and they sort of spring up out of the ground. They go into the sky, and yeah, if you're starving, locusts and grasshoppers are great. But some of the other insects, maybe not. But then again, like every source of calories and like bark from trees, even if it keeps you alive during the winter or during whatever circumstance, I'd rather see you live than die because you were trying to eat clean. Yet you're going to live a lot longer if you can totally avoid these unclean meats. And so, let's see. The other group is, oh yeah, and honey too. Bees, it's not a bee product, honey and pollen. They feed their animals with the honey, but, their babies and themselves. But they create extra for us to eat as well, and it's a flower product. You can live entirely on bee pollen only. It's a very good food, and this is definitely clean. And then there's also a group of animals that chew their cud and have divided hoofs, or cloven hooves, and they have to have both of these aspects, cloven hooves and chewing their cud. Like pigs, they just have cloven hooves. Pigs don't chew their cud. Many cultures recognize them as unclean, or avoid the pigs. Even like Rastafarians, that's one of their Rastafarians are pretty vegetarian a lot of times, but they just kind of focus on a living energy diet, and this is mostly going to come from plants. Like the Jews were kind of originally handed this list of clean foods, but they were also originally told to be vegetarians, and that's why they had to be given the clean list, was because they still were distinguished from other people, but they were being like rebellious or whatever. So it's like, okay, If you're going to choose to eat meat, then here's your choices. But in the beginning, in Genesis, God says, I give you every plant to eat, every herb, everything that grows seeds. And yeah, I don't think we can totally say that seeds, even as like raw fooders and stuff, they sometimes place way too heavy of an emphasis on seeds, and you don't necessarily have to eat seeds to live. There's all kinds of other sources of what's in those, and some people don't need them because they don't live in the winter, cold environments. They don't need that heat from seeds, but definitely all those fruits and green herbs are the best source of food, and that's what these grazing animals do, like sheep. They just eat the grass, they have these cloven hooves, and then we can eat them, whereas animals that eat like other animals, they're going to be much lower energy, much lower nutrients. That's why we don't eat dogs and cats and other things that eat meat, like people, monkeys, birds of prey, just, you gotta get as close as you can to the source, which is the sun, and the sun goes right to the green plants, and so we have like buffalo, elk and deer and goats even, and sheep. So even moose are clean animals, but not pigs, camels. Camels have the cloven feet, but they don't chew cud. Yeah, same with pigs. So, yeah, I think that's the entire list, basically, is like, yeah, just avoid, like, processed things, too, like gelatin, from their bones, but, yeah, there's more detailed lists. Some people say, like, very detailed things about, like, which nerves, like, you can't eat the feces nerve, that goes right to your brain and stuff. Well, anyway, yeah, you can look that up, but just one, final note, I guess, would be that, the way the animal is killed is important, and, you can, like, comfort your animal and be one-on-one with it and, like, pet its head and then come up and slice its neck and it's just dead. Or you can be violent, and when you're violent, when you kill these animals that are clean, they become unclean, and there's adrenaline and everything that happens and fear that the animal goes through, and that torture in their death makes them, unclean, and same with, like, sacrificing them to pagan gods or whatever. I guess there's, like, specific ways to kill an animal. I don't really see this happening in large scale environments, like these giant corporations that are producing meat. It's pretty much impossible to calmly kill that thing and then hang it up to dry in its blood. You're just going to be hurting it through a stressful environment, and then possibly even smushing it while it's alive. Like, I have seen pigs, they're living, right? They go into this room, and they get turned into meat by dead. It's disgusting. Like, you grind up the whole animal, I don't know, you can tell it's unclean. But yeah, if you are gonna eat meat, I suggest that maybe you grow it yourself and you kill it yourself, and you will not want to eat as much meat because it's kind of awful. But you just have to be really kind and tell this animal that it's okay to die and it's going to a great place, and just kind of believe that as you kill it, believe that this food is going to bless you. That's kind of a different subject, like how you can bless your food and put out the energy and put out the love towards your food, and the water molecules and everything will form into a great structure that is more beneficial than if you hadn't blessed and thanked and been in that attitude. And also just the stress that we're in when we eat. If you're eating something and you're like zoned out with a screen or just distracted, or you're eating out of fear, you're trying to fill something else, this can stress your body out to where it's not focusing so much on digestion. It's busy with fear, and it's busy with adrenaline and stuff, so it's busy with what you're focusing on. If you're like reading and eating, who knows when you've finished one fruit or you've just downed a whole bag of grapes. Like, you're not going to be paying attention. And let's just be mindful in how we treat our food, and definitely mindful in how we treat the animals that are given to us as a decent source of food. And you can live a long life on meat, it turns out. They just have to be, fins and scales, crops and gizzards, cloven feet, and chewing the cud. And don't have, defected animals, GMO animals. The information in the DNA of these things has been around unchanged for so long, and we are just meant to be with nature. We and nature depend on each other, and so we definitely have to learn about some of these things, and I've just enjoyed learning about clean meats, and I might eat some clean meats, but I will definitely try to stay vegetarian. I know it's definitely the best way, but I won't be afraid of, especially fish and stuff, like if it's from a good source and I grow it myself. It can be beneficial to your garden and to your life, and definitely help keep you from starving. So thank you for watching, and I hope you got some good information out of this. If you did, give it a thumbs up, comment, share it, whatever, and I encourage you to look further into this kind of stuff, like maybe insects. Like if where you're at you want to eat insects, like you might have to go searching, especially if there's not grasshoppers and locusts in your area. But have a lovely day and have a wonderful life, and I hope that your life is full of plants and greens, and that you really avoid violent deaths and violent meats and unclean animals, and have a long, happy life. Peace. Cheers.